All right, welcome back. I am very excited for this next guest that we have on the podcast today. So, I met Laura through a mastermind. And Laura, I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to meet and stay connected. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here, Julie.
Oh my goodness. And we, before we even hopped on this, we were already talking and I was like, wait, we need to just like start the podcast. We start recording because we're going to want to talk about all of this stuff.
Yes.
So I want to introduce Laura and then I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself because she does so many things. So Laura Sinclair believes that you and your business deserve to be seen. And it has made it her life, and she's made it her life's mission to support female entrepreneurs in their quest to build a life by design, which I just love that phrase in general, like build a life by design. So I want to dive into what you mean by that.
Yeah.
With over a decade of experience building digital marketing strategies for some of the world's biggest brands, Laura now teaches ambitious women how to adapt the strategies of Fortune 500s into their own businesses and really empowering them to step into their inner CEO along the way. A mother of two, Laura is a marketing and business mentor for ambitious women and CEO of the boutique social media marketing agency, the LJ Social Agency, and has been the host of the This Mother Means Business podcast, which is outstanding. We're going to talk about that because you all need to check it out if you are a mother. So, Laura, thank you so much. And all of the things, like just even reading that, it's like, oh my goodness, you have done so many things and you have so much to offer. So just share a little bit more about who you are and why you do what you do.
Oh my goodness. Whenever somebody reads my bio, I'm like, she sounds cool. Like, I want to know her.
I want to know her.
Thank you for that intro. Although it is always strange when someone reads your bio because you've written your own bio. But yes, I'm so honored to be here. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to connect. I guess it was last April. So April of 2022. Yeah.
I think that sounds
and
right.
I think if I recall, Julie, people confused us quite a lot.
Yes, they did.
People thought that we were the same person or that
They
we
did.
looked the same.
They're like, oh, did I just talk to you? Wait.
No. It's like we have very different accents. Like I'm Canadian, you are very much not Canadian, but that was one of the highlights for me. People were like, "Are you Julie?" No, I am not Julie. I'm Laura, but I am Canadian. If you could hear it in my voice, I'm a mother of two. I am a business and marketing mentor, and I own a boutique social media marketing agency. Really, my mission is to help you get your business seen. You said that in my bio, which I love, but also build a business without sacrificing your sanity. I am really passionate in this season of my life. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old of building my business my way and knowing that what works for people that don't have children or aren't primary parents is going to be so different than what it is for me. And I'm super passionate about the work that I do. I have a, to your point, a varied background. I have a corporate marketing background. I started my career in public relations. I ran a CrossFit gym for 5 years because, like, why not? And now I live my life in the online space.
I love it. And one of the things that really stands out when you talk about your background is, I don't know if this is a word that resonates with you, but just like the pivots that you've had, the transitions that you've had. So I would love if you could tell us a little bit more about those, because you have had all of these different experiences. Like, how did you make those pivots?
I think, so one thing that is very true about me is when I was a kid, I questioned a lot of things. And I'm realizing as I get older that part of that questioning, that desire to wonder why, is part of what has made me a successful entrepreneur. And so I always, my mother used to say to me, I played soccer and wanted to play rep soccer. And my mom would say, you don't make the team because the coach says jump and the other kids ask how high and you say why. Like, well, why would we do that? And I think for me, a lot of my pivots have come from this place of curiosity, of being like, I'm done with this thing. I want to try this thing, and this willingness to try and know that it's okay if I fail, and just being curious about what's there. And I think, if you were to look at my whole career, most people would get whiplash from thinking about, all the different things that I've done. But now I'm in this place in my business, certainly with the work that I do in the coaching side, that feels really full circle. Like it all makes sense for me now. But I really do think that a big portion of why I've been able to successfully make pivots is that I'm willing to look silly and I'm willing to try new things.
Oh, there's like so much gold that you just said. And just the words, like first word, curiosity. I absolutely love that word. I talk to my clients about that word all the time. Of like, how can we just be more curious and open?
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was like a big thing that you leaned into, is just that curiosity. And also then that, like you said, being willing to fail, being willing to like not be great right away, and being open to what comes with that. And then also just like that full circle. Isn't that crazy how we can look back and go, oh my goodness, that's why all of those things happened?
Yeah. But, and when you live in it in the moment, it's like none of this is fun. You know, when I think about my CrossFit gym, when we think back to March 2020, when we all shut down the world shut down for 2 weeks out of an abundance of caution, right? We all know the rest of that story. But I was 8 weeks pregnant with my 2-year-old son, my now 2-year-old son. And I owned a gym. And here in Ontario, Canada, I mean, gyms were closed for quite some time. And so, you know, I didn't really have another option. It was like, let's figure it out. And at the time, that felt really scary. You know, I was running fitness classes from my garage and nobody knew I was pregnant. So I would run the class on Zoom and then turn off the Zoom and throw up on the floor. And it was not the best, but you know, that was part of the realization that actually like this thing isn't serving me anymore. And I used to love fitness and love being in the fitness space. And that's what moved me out of the space back to sort of my home of marketing and my love for small business. And so, yeah, when you think about the journey, it does look really all over the place. And I don't know how much anybody that's listening knows about human design, but I'm a manifesting generator by human design.
Me too here.
So if you know human design and you know that about manifesting generators, then it does make sense. You're like, oh, of course, Laura, that you've pursued all these different things because you are multi-passionate. But it, you know, to come to a place now where I feel like the skills that I've developed, you know, I'm 36 over the last 36 years through my childhood, because a lot of those skills are important, really allow me to support the female entrepreneurs that I work with in a really powerful way.
I love that you brought that up too. I would say a recent discovery of human design. Like I'm familiar with so many different assessments and I've done so many. And when I discovered human design, I'm also a manifesting generator.
Yeah.
I just felt, just like the word you say, I felt so seen. And every time I see a post about it or somebody describing like a manifesting generator, I'm like, oh my goodness, that makes sense. Like this multi-passionate and not trying to contain that drive or that desire or that feeling, like actually leaning into it as a superpower.
Yes. Because why not? I mean, like the thing for me about being an entrepreneur, and this is year 10 for me of entrepreneurship in various different capacities. I think the thing for me that always stands out is just like how many exciting ways there are to grow businesses and to make money. Like to me, it feels like play. And so as a manifesting generator, it's like, okay, I'm going to run a gym. I'm going to try this and I'm going to do that. I'm running a retreat this year. Like, I have masterminds. I have the agency. Like, because for me, it's play. It's fun. But that, you know, is not everybody feels that way about entrepreneurship, but I do.
Right. Like a lot of people have this like, oh, what if I fail? Or I'm not even going to try.
Yes.
Right. And this, like, I'm not going to try because what if this thing happens? And one of the things that, you know, I love that we've talked about so much and that you have really started to focus on is building a business while being a mother. And I want to talk about that a little bit because especially for all of the moms listening, and even if you're not a mom, like just helping you to relate to moms or just understand this other side, it is a whole nother ball game when you are trying to do anything as a mother, but building a business as a mother. And so I know we've had some great conversations. Again, I'm going to do a plug for Laura's podcast, This Mother Means Business, because I had the pleasure of being on there and I absolutely loved our conversation, but I know you have had so many amazing conversations and I see people talking about like, thank you for just being so real and raw and honest. So tell us a little bit more about like, why did you start that?
Yeah, I think when I think back to when my daughter was born, so she just turned 6 and I was already an entrepreneur at that point. I knew how hard running a business was. And a lot of the rhetoric around motherhood was, congratulations, it's going to be so beautiful. You're going to love it, right? And the other mothers here in Canada, especially, people that work corporate jobs get a year of maternity leave. You can also take 18 months if you want, and you still have your job back. You're still, receiving employment insurance from the government. I didn't have that because I was an entrepreneur and I worked for myself. I couldn't very well just like shut the gym down for a year and be like, I am taking a mat leave. And so a lot of the conversations around motherhood was, enjoy it. It's going to be so restful. I never had that experience. Mm-hmm. And, for me, it was like how I had this brick and mortar business. I now have this tiny human that I was nursing that's literally leached onto me. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to navigate, who am I now? How do I run my business? How do I take care of this baby? How do I be a mom? The things that a lot of women go through, but they go through in silence. And so, as I built that business, my daughter's 6, I had another baby, really starting to unravel what good motherhood means and what it means for me. And I was having a lot of conversations with people like yourself and other mothers that I were meeting in entrepreneurial circles, putting myself into rooms and realizing that a lot of us had this same experience. But I can't just go to my local moms group or go to the park and meet a mom who's an entrepreneur, right? Because they don't get it. And I say that so lovingly. Like, you cannot understand what it is like to be a mother or a primary parent and also a CEO and also be passionate about your ambition and want to follow your dreams and also be a devoted parent. Like, unless you live it, you cannot understand it. And so for me, initially, and I know we're going to dive into authenticity a little bit today, but as I built my business, I was really open about my experience as a mom and the things that I was dealing with and sick kids and things like that. And as my business grew, my coaching business grew, I was realizing that 90% of my clientele were mothers. And so I was having a lot of these conversations with these women that were, saying, I feel seen for the first time. Like, thank you for saying that. And it's really over the last year, this realization that there's just not enough people having conversations about what motherhood and entrepreneurship is like. And, you and I have sat in mastermind rooms where we've had people at the front of the room saying, I go through 3 gratitude walks a day and we do this thing and that thing and we travel. And I'm just sitting there and I remember turning to the person beside me and saying, do they have kids? The person beside me was like, no. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I can't go for multiple gratitude walks a day. If I get to go for one, it's a good day. But that doesn't make me less. And so for me, it's really just this place of wanting to support mothers in knowing that they can have it all. They don't have to do it all, and helping them to build a business that supports the life that they want to live.
Oh my goodness. Can we just mic drop after all of that? I'm leaning in yes, tell me more. And then just so many things that you said, but one of the things that I feel connected us and really drew me to you, Laura, was this just real and authentic part of you and being able to have this conversation, because I also relate in that sense that I love motherhood, and also I'm so open to say it's also really freaking hard. Like any parenthood, right, is really hard. And I also felt like when I had my son and I was still this very ambitious, now here in the States we had 12 weeks, which is so crazy. And then I remember going back and just being conflicted, because I knew that I never really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and yet you're handing off this very small little baby to somebody else that you're thinking about all day, but then you're also trying to I was this high achiever, and I was always trying to prove myself, and I'm oh my gosh, but now I need to go down and nurse. It was just this yin and yang. But I remember sometimes talking to other new moms. They're it's beautiful, it's amazing, I haven't slept in a year, but it's the best thing in the world. And I'm sitting there going yeah, it is beautiful and it is amazing, and it's also sucks sometimes. And I just love that we were able to really talk about that, and that you're giving people the space to talk about that, because it not only does it just create connection with people, but it then, and just the word that comes to me is permission. It just gives us permission that it's okay to want this, and to say that it's this and this. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, and just because you don't want to spend every minute with your kids doesn't make you a bad mom. And that was something that I really had to unravel, was this my mom stayed at home. And so the versions of motherhood that I witnessed had a lot to do with martyrdom, a lot to do with sacrificing yourself and putting yourself last. That was what I grew up around. And so for me, I was I don't want to do that. I know that I can't do that. In fact, having to come to terms with the fact that I'm actually not a good mom when I am 100% with my kids. I have to go and do the things that I need for myself. I have to be able to have conversations like this. I have to be able to pour into my business, to work out, to do the things that I need that make me feel whole, so that I can also be present and loving with my kids. I mean, I spent just yesterday with my daughter. It's the summer. And so she's home all day. We went out for breakfast. We went to the makeup store, which she's 6, so she thought that was hilarious. We went and got pedicures. We went swimming. We did I had a full day, right? Great day. Then I started doing my emails at night after they went to bed. And this morning I could not wait to drop her off at daycare. I love you, but that was a full fun day for mom. Now I need to go tap back into the things that I want to do. And I get to have this conversation with you today. But certainly, when that first year of motherhood, even saying that out loud to you wouldn't be something that I would have felt safe saying because I wasn't hearing that from anybody else.
And that voice, like that judgment, oh, that fear. What are people going to say? What are people going to think? And I also remember having moments like that where it's like, if I told people like, oh, no, I don't want to stay home, like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? And just like being able to like shake all of that off. And again, it's just so amazing that you are having this conversation. And I think we're hearing this more and more, but not only that, are you like authentically just doing it with people, you're creating a space, like you're intentionally creating a space now for women. And so when you talk about like being seen and helping other women to be seen, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I love this question. And so it really does tie back into authenticity. And there's two parts of it because I'm a marketer, right? And it's very easy for me to say, here are the steps that you need to do to go and get your business seen, right? To go get your business in front of new audiences. Because at the end of the day, you can have, and this applies to corporate life too, right? If you want a promotion, you're looking to be seen, you want to speak, you want to have those opportunities, right? Being seen, it's very easy to throw the tactics around the how, right? How to get new audiences, how to put yourself in the rooms, how to ask for the promotion, right? All that stuff. But there's an element of being seen that is deeply mindset based, that is deeply based in your ability to actually allow yourself to be seen. Because it's very easy to say like, hey, let's use the entrepreneurship example just because it's top of mind for me and it's the life that I live day to day. But it's very easy to say, okay, go pitch this, pitch this podcast, collaborate with this person, create this piece of content, pitch this, pitch yourself for this magazine or this website, or join this group, go to this networking call. Like all of that is so easy to say, but it is very hard for a lot of people to actually do because of the fear, what ifs, right? What if I say the wrong thing? What if they don't like me? What if I don't fit in, right? All of those stories, which were all stories that I used to tell myself a lot. I lived in that world. This fear of, being too much. That was, growing up. And I've learned actually that manifesting generators, apparently as children, and I don't know if you had this experience, we're constantly told like, be quiet, that's too much. Like your energy is too big. And at least that was my experience. And so coming into, even starting a podcast, the fact that I have a podcast, my 7-year-old self would have been like, there are people that want to listen to what it is that I have to say, because growing up, it was told, Laura, put a sock in it. You're good. Like, stop. And so, I'm losing my voice. Sorry. When it comes to being seen, it's really two-sided. It's about how do you get yourself like actually seen, eyeballs on you, but also how do you allow yourself to let that happen.
Ooh, I love that you talk about both.
Yeah.
Right? Because not only are you helping people from like the tangible perspective, like, hey, this is what you do. This is like how I can help support you in getting your business seen. But then also, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that you are also helping people with like, okay, I can give you all of these strategies and all these techniques and I can help your business get seen. But if you don't take care of this over here, so what do you do for people who are in that space that are like, hey, I want my business to get out there and get seen. Yeah. But all of a sudden you're starting to notice that they've got this like inner talk coming up.
So it's really interesting. We started talking about personality tests, and Myers-Briggs is another one of my favorites. And I'm an INTJ. So where a lot of my clients I have discovered have an F where I have a T. I don't know what's yours. What's your Myers-Briggs? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm familiar with Myers-Briggs, but I don't know mine on that one.
So I'm an introvert. The rest of it doesn't really matter. People are always surprised to hear that I'm an introvert, but yes, I'm an introvert. But the T is thinking, and the F is feeling. And so not that I'm not a feeling person. It's just that I'm actually a deeply feeling person. But I have the ability to logic a lot of things that a person with an F struggles to. And so a lot of the time when we're looking at, these what ifs, these imposter syndromes, these, I don't know kind of scenarios, where I can come in is really start to logic against it and really help a feeling person see that we can work through a lot of these things by just looking at what's true. And, that story of, and I went through this even when I launched the podcast, like and it's something I do with myself, right? Like all the time. But, what's the truth? What if nobody listens to my podcast? What if nobody cares? Well, that's fine. At the end of the day, if one person listens to the podcast, that's great. Or if someone's having this story of like, what if somebody's going to judge me? Well, the fact is that anybody that's judging you is doing less than you. Nobody that's doing more than you is going to be judging you. And so sometimes it's just changing the lens on things that I'm able to do and have always been able to do, because I have this logical side of my brain that sometimes, I'm not going to say it's perfect. Sometimes it's like I will over logic situations, but being able to help my clients, they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm going to use I have a couple examples of this where a client will say, I want to start an agency one day. And or a tutoring. I've had clients say, I want to start a tutoring agency, or, I'm a solopreneur and I want to build an agency one day. Like, well, what do you mean by one day? Talk to me about that. It's like, well, eventually when I have it all figured out, when I feel like I'm ready. And it's like, well, what if you just started today? What if you just said you had an agency? What if you just started? Like, let's talk about this. Let's logic it. And so a lot of the work that I do is like, let's put some logic on top of this feeling and see if we can move through it. Does it eliminate the feeling? No. But does it help us to be scared, do it anyway? Yes.
Oh my goodness. I just love that. And I can see that. I mean, I don't know, I'm curious. Like, I'm familiar with so many assessments and I've done a lot of different ones. There's DISC, there's StrengthsFinder, there's Myers-Briggs, there's all these different assessments. And I'm familiar with Myers-Briggs, but I've never taken it. But it's really interesting hearing you talk about that, because I always say for myself too that I tend to lead more with logic and I'm less outwardly emotional than I would say other people, other women. But it doesn't mean we don't feel, right? Like, obviously
we cry. I will sit in the corner and cry like a baby. I will bawl. Let's be honest.
Right. It's just like this different way that you present it. So I love that you can bring in this reframe, is what I often say, like this reframe for people, because that is what is always matters. So what I talk to people, no matter where you're at, no matter if you're in corporate, no matter if you have a business, if you want to have a business someday, anything that we want to do, obviously the podcast is called It Starts With You. So it's like, it starts with you taking care of you first and getting to that root. So I always say we need to have the internal and the external strategies. Like, we can do all of the internal work, but if we don't have like, okay, now what do I actually do with this? And we don't take action, we don't see results. But on the other side, someone can give you all of the strategies and all of the techniques, but if you don't work on the internal like stuff going on, you're never going to take action. So I always talk about that internal and external, and I love that you bring this in for your clients. What would you say, and this might be a hard question, but like if somebody is listening and they're going, okay, this is great, I want to be seen wherever I'm at, more is who I am, I want to be more authentic, how do they even get started in doing that?
It's funny, we were talking about this before we started recording. I build a lot of my business off my authenticity. And so a lot of people will say to me, I got off a connection call with somebody just the other day, and we were chatting about motherhood, and she was, at the end of the call, she said, thank you for being like so authentic and real. Like, it's really refreshing. And I remember hanging up thinking like, what kind of conversations are you having with people? And, same thing in my business, people will say, I hired you because you're authentic. And for me, I joke that I'm authentic because I'm too tired to be anything else. But the truth is that I've really had to come home to myself. And it starts with confidence. It starts with knowing yourself and truly being okay with other people not liking you. And, I am a child. As a child, I really wanted to fit in, and I never really did. I played sports. And so, I was able to fit in with the other people I played sports with in high school, but I was always a bit of like a seeker. I was always like morphing myself and changing myself to fit in with other people. And actually when we did, I don't know if it was Myers-Briggs, but we did an assessment when I was in corporate, and it was like, there was like 2 data points that the test ended up with. And one was like who you are outside of work and who you are in work. And I forget which one this is, so I'm not even going to try to name it. But what it was showing is that outside of work, I was, if it was on this circle, let's imagine a bullseye, that I'm in like the upper right quadrant of this bullseye outside of work. But inside of work, I'm like right in the middle. And so I remember going up, my 20-something-year-old self, going up to the facilitator and saying like, hey, aren't I doing good? Like, I'm able to morph myself to be this person. I'm like, aren't I killing it? I'm right in the middle. And the person said to me, well, it depends on how you want to look at it. And they said, yeah, sure, you're good at morphing yourself to being what other people want you to be, but you're not being your authentic self at work. And I think at the time I just kind of like blew it off, like, yeah, whatever, what does this guy know? But it's something that has really stuck with me. Like, this would have been at least 15 years ago. And I think for me, I have constantly, consistently in my life tried to put myself towards like the center of the bullseye, right? To not be too much, to not be opinionated, even though my personal life, I'm very opinionated and stubborn and very big-headed at times. And so for me, really over these last couple of years and like outside of motherhood, once I sort of came out of that bubble of like what just happened, which I think most people experience when they become a mom for the first time,
Right.
it really started being like, who am I really? Who am I in this? And if I'm not for everybody, what does that mean? And it means that it's fine. That's okay. But the people that I'm for, those are the people that matter. And the people that, like, I can build a business and I can make impact on the people that I am for, knowing who I am as I get closer and closer to that upper right quadrant of the bullseye. But it's truly being okay with who it is that you are and allowing other people to see that. Because I think if I wasn't authentic, if I did show up in a way, and to be totally honest, when I first started showing up on social media, I was not authentic. I was doing what I thought that I was supposed to be doing. And so I would be like fully made up and I'd have my little blazer on. Now, there's nothing wrong with a blazer. We love a blazer. But it was like this very polished,
Yep.
very like trying to appear perfect, which I think a lot of people online do. And it wasn't until I started to like show up on my stories with soaking wet hair and allow myself to be imperfect and talk about my frustrations and my struggles that everything changed for me in my business. That all of a sudden people want to relate to me and they're connecting with me and the human side of it. And so I think it's twofold. I think it's allowing yourself to just be who you are, but it's also knowing that you're not going to be for everybody and there's nothing wrong with that. The same way that you don't like everybody. I don't like everybody.
Right. Like, that's the thing. And it's permission. I'm going to pause and tell everybody listening, like, pause right now and rewind and listen back to that, like, literal mic drop moment. And Laura, I can't wait for when this comes out and you, like, listen to yourself back, because everything that I was, like, jotting down these words that you said, because you just had so many goosebump moments that you just shared with all of us in wisdom. And, like, I was jotting it down, like, this coming back home to yourself.
Yeah.
I love that. And if people were, I've said this before, this is one of the things that came up to me years ago and I wrote it down. It's so interesting that you just said it, is this phrase, back to you. Like, this phrase kept coming up to me years ago, like, gosh, people just coming back to who they are. And then when you just said, like, coming back home to you, it just, like, brought that up, like, oh, that phrase had been swirling for me for a while. And just people giving them and allowing themselves to really figure out who they are, which, again, we question so much once you become a mom, like, oh my gosh, who am I?
Yeah.
And then just this, like, bullseye example that you just gave around, like, how we show up one way and in other environments because we feel like we have to. We feel like, oh, well, I'm in this corporate office or I'm in this room of entrepreneurs who are like this, so I have to be like this. And then you just keep morphing yourself until the point that you don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can relate to that fully.
That's just, so go back and listen to that. And then the tips that you just gave at the end about, like, getting more clear on who you really are and then being okay with not everybody liking you.
Yeah.
And, like, that can be a really hard pill for, like, the perfectionists and stuff to swallow. But if you are trying to get everybody to like you, then you aren't being authentic to who you are. And you most likely aren't as successful in whatever definition that means for you as you want to be. Because you can't be successful and fulfilled and happy if you're trying to make everybody else feel that you are.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have a lot more to unpack than we realize. And, I'm a person that has gone to therapy consistently for 7 years. And that's been a big part of it, right? Is so much of certainly how I was raised and the way that I grew up was other people's opinions of what it should be, how I should be being layered on top of me all the time, right? I mentioned earlier, it was like, Laura, you're too much. I played sports. I wanted to be high achieving in sports. I was highly competitive. It was like you went to school, you got your degree, you did the corporate thing, you climbed the corporate ladder. Who cares who you step on the way up? Like, you're going up, right? Like it doesn't matter. And so for me, there was a period of my life where I was so competitive with other women, largely because of my own discomfort with myself. And, I was doing things the way that I thought that I was supposed to. Like I was I had a great corporate career. I had the jobs that everyone was like, wow, I ran all the digital marketing in Canada for a German luxury automotive company, which was only 3. So you can probably guess which one it is. And people looked at me and was like, that's such a great job. But I was always so uncomfortable. Like it wasn't what I wanted. And thank goodness, I found entrepreneurship and I started to shed a lot of those stories of what things were supposed to look like. And it has come with a lot of healing. It's been very painful at the same time, but a lot of it, coming home to myself, when I think about that, it's really like coming back to almost like the child version of myself, like who was the 6-year-old. And motherhood is a big part of that because my daughter is in so many ways exactly like I was as a child. She has been the most healing and the most triggering human being on the planet because she lives in her fullest expression of herself. And that was how I was as a child. But I was told to tone it down. I was told it was too much. And so with her, it's wildly healing because I can allow her to be this full expression with, we'll rate it a little bit. Yesterday at breakfast, she was playing with a straw. I told her not to do it, dumped a whole cup of water on herself, and we sat there in our wet clothes and had our breakfast. But, it is a really interesting balance. And I think, I talk about that healing. Motherhood was really the beginning of it, of this recognition that my daughter is this version of me that I should have been able to have been. And I need to come home to who I really am. And so I think that work with, a lot of layers, we could probably have a full episode on all of the mental health and all of the self-care and all of the unpacking that Laura has done. And I share it really openly on my podcast. So if you're curious, come over to that party. But yeah, I think, when we talk about authenticity, a lot of being seen, a lot of it is like allowing yourself to just be who you are.
Oh my goodness. There's just like one thing I want to highlight, and then I've got 2 final questions for you, but just what you just talked about. And I feel like it's so interesting because I always say to people, and I recorded an episode with somebody else, and we had a similar conversation at the end around when you step into entrepreneurship, starting a business, or anything that's really stretching you. I always say you have to face the deepest, darkest parts of yourself because they come out swinging. And then you layer on when you have kids. You have to face the deepest, darkest parts of yourself. And then you're trying to do both, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you're doing both because you are facing like all of these things. And so it's such a challenging and beautiful thing that you just shared around like, okay, now I have this kid and they're like me. And I always say like, when we know better, do better. And so we now know some of the ways that we were impacted as children and the way that we were treated or told how to be or not be. And it's like, I don't want to do that. But man, is it tiring, right? Because sometimes when you know all of this, you're like, okay, they're really triggering me. But then you've got, you're almost like fighting with yourself. Like, okay, but let them be who they are. But wait, I need to teach them this. Like, it can be exhausting. And yet I always say, like, do the best you can with where you're at, with what you've got.
Always.
And we'll all make it through this journey of motherhood and life and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, we're all doing the best we can with the tools we have, but it's up to us to go find more tools.
Oof. Okay, Laura, so this has been such a beautiful conversation. I always like to end the episodes with 2 final questions. The first one is, it's going to kind of summarize what you talked about, but if you could shake somebody and tell them one thing, what would it be?
Oh, you do not need anyone's permission to do what you want with your life.
That just came to you, like there it was.
You know what? I posted this on a reel yesterday on my Instagram because it was something that came to me. I don't know where I was. It was probably like 2 a.m. after somebody's had a nightmare lying in bed. And it was just, I think it's like, you don't need people's permission. It's something that's come to me recently. And I think, when I talked earlier about how I tried to fit myself into boxes that I was told I was supposed to be in. And I don't know whose permission I was waiting for, but like, you don't, we get one shot at this and none of us know, I think we were in the same room. Keisha was there. Keisha Fitzgerald, she was talking about how like none of us know when our clock's going to run out. And, there's a story of a woman that I know locally that, found out she had cancer and passed away in less than 4 weeks. And it's stuff like that. That's just like wildly perspective shifting. And like, what permission are we waiting for? If there's something that you want to do, there's something that you want to try, I recognize that there's privilege behind me being able to say that, but like, you don't need anyone's permission to try the thing. You don't need anyone's permission to change your mind or to try something new or put yourself out there, regardless of entrepreneur, in corporate, like wherever you're at. I think so many of us are waiting for somebody else to tell us like, yeah, it's actually okay, but it is okay. And only you get to decide that.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And then the last question, and it might relate. I'm always curious to see how people's answers come out with this last one. So the name of the podcast is called It Starts With You.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I think very similar vein, right? Like at the end of the day, the only person that has your back is you. And that can feel like a little sad, right? There's lots of people that are surrounding you and supporting you, and we all have communities and villages of different sizes. But I think you're the author of your life. You get to create what you want to create. And I think so often the external stories, which we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast episode today, are the things that actually hold us back. It's other people's voices. And sometimes those are voices that actually we have just made up in our heads. But I think it really does. Like, it all has to come from within. You have to choose you have to ask for help. You have to choose to do the scary thing, but it really does start and finish with us. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Laura, so much for joining us, for sharing your wisdom and, the word that we talked about a lot, because it really does come up when I think of you and I talk to you, is authenticity. So thank you for just being authentic. And I know that once people listen to this, they are going to want to find you. So share with us, first of all, what do you have going on and how can people find and connect with you?
Oh my goodness. I always have so much going on. I'm a wild, like I talked about that earlier, manifesting generator. I'm a wild woman, but I am currently running a mastermind for ambitious mothers. It's closed right now, but it'll be opening up in January. So if you're a mother and you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for opportunities to connect, I also host every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. I have a networking call. So if you want to come and hang out, it's totally free. Come join us, meet some other entrepreneurial women. A lot of them are mothers, but you don't have to be a mother to come to that community. But if you made it this far in the episode, we are officially friends. So make sure that you follow me on Instagram. That's where I hang out the most. I'm at It's Laura Sinclair. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm at Laura Connor/Sinclair, because most of the people that I built my corporate world know me as Connor. But yeah, find me on Instagram, send me a DM, let me know that you listen to the podcast. I love connecting and making new friends. So be sure to say hi.
Amazing. And we will make sure that we drop all of her contact information in the show notes as well. So Laura, thank you so much for all of that. It was such an amazing conversation. And thank you all for listening. And we will see you next time.
Bye.